All right, guys. So we're going to do the limited slip, the phantom grip. We're going to switch it from the gold springs that are in there to the green springs. So from street to strip. Let's do it. Thanks for watching, guys. One thing too, I want to tell you, the reason on all the other videos you see for these S series transmissions, they fast forward through it. They don't give you a lot of information on what's going on. And look, if you don't need all this extra, just fast forward through it. I mean, but for those that would, then there it is.
Two of these you need to slide up. That locks the gears. And of course, we won't be reusing this gasket. So the first four bolts you're going to take off is these four. Now they say you need to bolt this to the thing you're working on. You can see it's pretty flimsy right now. When it comes time to get to any kind of really hard work that's going to try to make it to move, I may have to drill through this little table. I may not. I may use a come along to just like a strap to strap it and hold it down tight. So it's no big deal. I'm just going to wait till I get to that point. So first thing we did was take off this, the shift housing. So I'm contemplating doing a little modification here on this thing that I saw online. They say you chop it on this shift linkage. You chop it here and you flip this up, and it's supposed to help. Basically, it creates a short throw shift. I've already got a relatively short shifter in the car, so if that would make it even a shorter shift, that would be better. So I may end up doing that. We'll see. The next thing you want to do, I'm not going to move the camera, but if you look over here, there's a sensor. That's your vehicle speed sensor. The size of it is a 24 millimeter, so you're going to want to take that off. And remember, when you're tightening it back, that's plastic, and of course you're screwing into aluminum. So you're going to want to pay attention not to just break it all off of there. When you're tightening it, over tighten it. And it seals with an O-ring there, that brown O-ring. But this is a VSS sensor, a variable. This is kind of like your crankshaft position sensor. So I'm looking for any kind of debris on there, you got just a little bit on here. I would suspect that's just from gear wear or whatnot, but I'm really interested to get that phantom grip out of there and see what's been chewed up. A lot of people don't know when you put in that phantom grip block, you have to slide it in, and they give you some measures on with some feeler gauges, and you need to have a certain spec that is a gap in between that thing. And so yes, you do have to sand it down a little bit. Even though you buy it specifically for the Saturn, you will need to just shim it or kind of sand it down a little bit. You can do that with a belt sander. You can put sandpaper on a table, but yes, you do need to do that. I've seen some videos where these people have used these phantom grips and they pull them out and they're all chewed up and stuff. That's because they did not go through the process of shimming them, or getting them to fit in there properly. Now I know I did that on one because I specifically bought like an electric sander with a belt on it to do it, but I don't remember if it was the dual overhead cam one that I just took out of here or if it was this one. I'm not sure. So like I said, I'm kind of excited just to get in here and take a look and see. If it is all chewed up and if the spider gears are still okay, then I'll just order another one and put it in there. But that's one thing you want to watch out for. But this is the speed sensor, so you'll need to take that out. And so basically staying on top of it for you, these bolts here, they were 10 millimeter. That one, like I said, was 24. And now we're going to take off this top portion here, and these look to be like they're 8 millimeter. Now I've done this before, and what I would do if I was doing it the first time is I'd be looking at each one of these bolts to make sure, just due to the structure that might be in here, is one bolt shorter than the other ones, because then you're going to need to put that bolt back in there. If this was short and you try to put this long one back in here and you're screwing it down and it's getting kind of tough, and you say, okay, well, let me put a little, and you force it in, it could crack whatever you're putting it into. So first time, of course you're watching this, so first time you're always going to want to watch out and make sure that your bolts are the same length, and of course on this thing it is. And I'd encourage you to use like a plastic or rubber mallet on this type of stuff. You know what's starting to kind of nag at me? When I did that one that I've done, like I said, I could have swore I did it on the single. I know I have it on that dual, 100%. But I thought I did it on this single one as well. But now it would have been a long time ago for sure. So maybe at that time when Saturn was still open, I was able to get these gaskets. But now I didn't even look, because I've got that anaerobic sealer that we're going to be putting on here. So that's what I'm going to use to seal it back with. But I'm starting to doubt now, because unless, like I said, it's maybe I didn't. So now we're going to remove these two nuts on top here. What size is this thing? Okay, so 29 millimeter is what this one is. Let's see if I can use this thing to get this off of here. Nope. Nope. Alright, so this might be where we got to secure it down because we're going to have to get a breaker bar and take it off. Or I can start up yeah, let me try to impact it off first. Nope. Let's see what we can do. Hopefully it works. Alright. Top on. And bottom one. Alright, so if you have an impact, it took a second, but it's a 29 millimeter. Alright, so now, since the nuts are off, you want to take off, there's a little clip right here. I'm moving it. Once you take that clip off, then you can lift this assembly up off of here, and you want to keep all this together. Now the manual says that like the nuts that you just took off, they want you to replace those, like discard them. There's going to be several times in here where it says discard. I think they even want you to discard this clip, but yeah, good luck finding those nuts now in this clip. So you got to reuse it, okay? So if it's a concern, and I probably will do this myself, I'll put some Loctite once I'm done torquing those down, just to try to keep them, you know, where they're supposed to be. That's all you can do, unfortunately, with a car that no longer has any real support. So. So if you're like me and you mess up and you somehow, some way
I think when I took this thing off, I rolled it on the table and it came apart, so I just kind of quickly put it back together to get focused back on what I was doing. If that happens to you, just use this diagram right here and it'll tell you which one goes on where and how and all that good stuff. So you'll just start, obviously, you know, this part, this roller bearing collar, and then this piece, that piece goes on top of here. There's a little wire ring that goes in the bottom, or actually will be on the top of that. Then this piece, which has this piece already in it, basically. I'm sorry, this piece. And you can see this piece that's inside of there, that collar raised up right there. That right there is that raised up piece. And of course this thing goes into the slot on the side there. And then you just watch the line, it goes over to here, up over to here, and onto there. And that's just how everything stacks on top of each other. So this would be first, second, third, fourth. These two fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, and then finally the nut. There you go. And then there's that retainer right there. I've done here, per the diagram, I just took them off one by one and laid them face up. So there's the nut, washer, this castle piece, or the reverse, whatever you call it. I wish they labeled the darn things, because they talk about them over here, but they don't label what's what. And as far as I told you, transmissions, this is only my second time in 20 years to mess with these things. And so it's not a big fan. So washer, this piece, then you got this piece, and if you look at the picture, it's orientated correctly, because you've got those, it's just like that. There's the ring there, and then there's a nub, and you can see there's that nub, and that's the ring. They just separate it so you can see the exploded diagram. And then there's this piece. Now, as you see in the picture, they don't separate it as two pieces, but yet it is two pieces. And this is the part of it that they say that you got to align the marks on. And so I'm going to look for these marks here and see what I can find. But I've laid out everything in order. And here's the little fork. This piece here is that piece, and of course it has a ring on it, and it has a ring, and it's setting up like that. And I'm not sure, no. So, and then you have this piece, and this piece doesn't separate at all. It looks like it's got pressed on stuff, if anything. And then of course you got the roller bearing sleeve and the collar right here. And that's all that first set. All right, so I found the marks. They're not, if you look at that diagram right there, let's see if this thing to focus well. That mark right there should line up with a mark that's right there. But look at that mark. That looks like it's a machined in mark. It's easily identified. You can see it pretty easy. And this picture is kind of hard to see about right there, but it's supposed to be, let's see if I can't focus this thing in. There we go. You can see that mark looks like it should be very identifiable. And then it lines up with that mark. Now, if you've worked with installing pistons and piston rings and things like that, a lot of times there'll be those circular marks on those that you know which side goes up and everything. I was looking for that when I first put this thing together, and I didn't see anything like that. I did see something, and I'll show you, but that looked more like some kind of wear. If you go down here, this is the gear that goes inside this one. Look to see if you see any discerning mark on here, like a piston ring, you know, like a machined in matching part. You don't. Look right there. You see that shiny right there? That's the damn mark. I'm sorry, Lord. I don't mean to. But look at that. That's the mark. And look over here. That's the mark. That's crazy. And so if you try to put this in any way outside of that, it's not going to slide in there. You match up these two marks, boop, right in there. Remember how I was saying I wish there was a way that they would label these things so you know what they are? When you wish upon a star, makes no difference who you are. It's in the back of the field service manual, along with all the torque specs, all that good stuff. I'm glad I got this field service manual years ago. Years ago. Okay, so now that you got all that stuff off of here, it says you can go ahead and take off these case bolts that surround here. There's several of them. Yeah, so now you can see it's starting to move some. I'll tell you what we'll do. Let's do this. Great, the battery's gone. So, let's go Old Faithful here. See if we can do this. There we go. That should do it. Now here again, I'd tell you, watch for different length bolts. If it's your first time. Now I've never cracked anything, but on sometimes when I've been working on engines or other stuff, yes, I got to tightening it and I said, wait man, how come this thing won't go any tighter? And sure enough, I don't know. All right. So, next, we're going to be pulling this whole section up and off. And on outside of here, there's these little snap rings that you got to take loose. So the goal is to spread them far enough to where these things drop down through, okay? So hopefully these will work for us. This one has a bolt hole here and a bolt hole here, and I just swapped it over. When this nut is in this hole, when you squeeze it, it grabs. When you put it on this outer one, when you squeeze it, it spreads. Okay, so that's what we're going to use. So if you look, right here, those two tangs, one here, one there, and then over here, there's those two down inside here, those two tangs. So you're going to use your spreader, you're going to put your tool down in here like this, and you're going to squeeze, and it's going to open that. You can see it moving a little bit right now. I'm not ready to do it at the moment, but you can see that's what will happen. So once we get the snap rings undone, and the goal is to let this thing drop below both of them, then there's some pry slots right here that will help you get the cover started to be released. You just slip your pry bar into there and very carefully and gently start lifting up. So that's where the pry bar slots are at. So there's that pry slot. It's just above one of these vent holes on there. And of course, like I showed you, the other pry slots on this side, right there. So this snap ring is, you can see it's above. That one there is still kind of down in there, but it looks like it's on the face of the actual bearing rather than this groove below it. But I think that's our hold up here. So you can see that little snap ring right there, it's freed. What I had to do was on this one is a little bit easier. Once you separate that case a little bit like that, just take a rubber mallet and hit on top of here, and it will work its way past that snap ring and finally free itself up. So it's definitely released now. There we go. So there's a pry slot here, and there's a pry slot over on that other side. Yeah, I think I'm just gonna have to get a little groovy with it here. There we go. Need this sucker to release though. I don't like how it's doing that. I don't want it to pull up with it. There it is. All right, cool. Straight up. Alright, snap rings will stay in there. So there's our differential. There's your diff pin, and I'm going to do something with that too when I get it out. Here's your gears. Just kind of get it around. And so next, very simple step, this tube here, it goes in a specific way, which you can't really get it wrong. If you try to put it in a different way, it won't go in. It's got a specific shape to it. So you go in just like that. You'll take that out. Just kind of get it out of the way. It doesn't serve like a crucial step or anything, but you want to get it out of the way, so now we can take off these two bolts here. And I believe those are, looks like 8. Yep.
It has been a very long time since I've done this. And you can see right here, someone had put some Loctite on that as well. I don't think that's a factory thing you do, but I suspect any bolt that's inside here that you can't get access to later, probably not a bad idea to do that. Yeah, they both had some Loctite on them. So, I'm thinking all of this here is going to come up and off. At least I think. We'll take this off for now. Whew, stuff stinks. I think that is the... Man, it smells like fish butt. I don't know if it's the old Loctite or what, but whew, it's stinky. It smells like, well, I don't want to say what it smells like. But. All right, now, let's see. Normally, from what I believe, I think maybe later year models, they had this type of clip here that was in there like that, because they're showing a second one, and yet this has more or less like some bushing or something there. Okay, I'm lifting out this gear here, this small gear. Set it off to the side. And in lieu of taking this thing off and destroying that, not having something to go back in, I think I'm going to try to take all this up off out of here together and hope it all stays together. Hopefully. There should be nothing else holding it in. I just took this whole thing off together. Yeah, those plastic bushings, those yellow bushings, if you go to take those off, the fact that you're probably not going to be able to find like that metal one that I showed you. So yeah, you want to take them off both together. So as far as we're concerned, there's some other little bearings in here and stuff like that. We're not needing to mess with those. You can look at them and see how what kind of shape they're in or whatever, but chances are if you got a transmission, unless you bought it used, you'll know the condition of it. But here's a little magnet that's meant to pick up, you know, debris and stuff like that. And that's the reason it's there. I mean, picking up some of this, you're going to have some debris that's generated from all these gears meshing together. And so you can see it's got some on there. We'll clean all that off, obviously. Now I'm just cleaning all this extra fluid up in here because I did spray some brake clean in there earlier. So I just want to get all that out of here, and I will pretty much do more when I get to that point, when I go to clean this thing up, because I'm going to be spraying brake clean around here, cleaning up this gasket surface and things like that, so I'm not too concerned. magnet back in there. So this is the differential. This pretty much just lifts up and out of here. At least that's what I remember. So I'm going to turn this over and just give it a little love tap. Now this of course is where your drive shaft will go in at, so I'm just going to lift this up a little bit and just kind of tap it. Seem to want to go. So again, not enough to do any damage in there, just kind of like to free it up a little bit on the blunt end of something like this. This is a punch, but it's the blunt end. Turn it back over. This sucker does not just want to lift up out of here. I know that much. Let's try something different. So that got her to poke her head up a little bit. See if we can't get it up out of here now. Nope. So yeah, so you may need to turn around, support it up, get it up off the face of your bench there. And I'll use 2 pieces of wood to kind of get it up in the air. And those little taps I did just a second ago, that was enough to get it to start. Another piece of wood. We'll put this one on this side. The main thing is we know that there's not a snap ring or there's nothing like that keeping it from dropping out. It's just been in here for a while. And so it needs a little coaxing to get on out. And again, I'm not hitting very hard with this at all because I don't want to mess up anything inside there. So I'm just a little bit of taps. 12 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 9 o'clock. There he goes. All right. And hey, well, you know, it is the one I put in there. Interesting. So I'm going to move this off and out the way. I did not think I did have that in there. Honestly, I started looking in there and I said, wait a minute, it does not look right. Now I'm going to share with you. Let's get down here and look at this thing. So the Phantom grip, again, is nothing more than two metal blocks. And inside these metal blocks, I think there's a total, until we open it up, we'll see, but 4 or 6 springs. I don't remember. But we're about to open it and see. But when it comes, when you slide it in here, there's not any space in between this block and this block. It's got these little tabs with some roll pins in here. So this is now the one that's in here has gold springs, and that's the whole reason I'm doing what I'm doing right now. But this one here comes with these green springs. This is like the upgrade kit. This is your strip springs, okay? This is going to give you your max bite. Now, the gold springs that were in here, just like on the dual overhead cam trans, yes, when you have that in the air and you spin one tire forward, the other tire on the opposite side spins forward as well. But if it wasn't limited slip, the other tire would go the opposite direction, okay, typically. So this is basically stopping that from happening and making both wheels go the same direction. Saturns, especially if you do burnouts and stuff like that, Saturns have a propensity for this pin here to shoot out and damage the case, okay, and then you need a transmission. I have found though that the Phantom grip helps keep that from happening, not because it's holding it in here tightly. It's not. There's a little roll pin right there that usually breaks, and that's what sends this thing shooting out. And I want to say it's just on that one side. So when you put the Phantom grip in here, now both sides are turning at the same speed. You don't have that one aggressive one side wheel spin happening. Now, also what would happen, it's not because people were drag racing the Saturn en masse, and that's where it got this issue with the pins. It was during wet weather or snowy weather. People were sitting there gunning their engines and the wheels were spinning. The one wheel's doing the one leg burnout. And that's where a lot of this stuff was happening at. So it wouldn't matter if you were burning out at a drag strip or in a snowstorm. These pins would come up, and you can see it moves. See how it moves a little bit right there? So a lot of people, when they have these up and out, they'll sit here and weld this pin. They'll weld it. For me, I don't know if it's because I try not to burn out, because it's really a pointless effort to burn out, you know, unless you're, like I said, warming your tires up on a strip event. But I think what does help is this Phantom grip. So when it comes, when you put it in here, you'll put it in a vise and you'll compress it, okay? Compress it shut. And then you'll put these little pins in here, right? And then on top of those pins, you'll slide this over, and that keeps them together as you slide it into here. And then when you get it in here and you get it positioned, then you pop these off, and then you take out these pins. You certainly don't want to leave those in there. And there you go. One thing that people don't do, I think I mentioned it, is you have to, when you put these in here, you have to, even though you buy them for the Saturn, you do have to, and there's some instructions when it comes, you have to have a certain amount of clearance in between the spider gears and this block. And if you don't, you have to sand them down. And we're talking about thousandths, you know, things like that. So it won't take much sanding, but you do have to sand it down. If you don't have a belt sander, then you'd want to put some sandpaper on a flat surface, back and forth, applying the pressure. You'll want to spin it around, apply the pressure on the opposite side and all that stuff, and maybe spin it horizontal, vertical on the table, like change positions so you get an even cut on it. But anyway, so now what we're going to have to do is we'll have to get this pin out, that roll pin, so we can get this out so that I can slide this out. Here's your roll pin out. So you can see that one side
That's where the roll pin goes. It's fairly long, the pin. So what I did was I found a much smaller roll pin, and my punch was only so long, so it has to go through that hole to finally be pushed out. So I just took a much smaller roll pin, kind of fed it in on the side that I had it already punched into, and just finished it on out. And then this one fell out because it was so small, it's not going to fit in that bore real tightly. So, all right, so it's out. Looking at the spider gears inside there, they don't look worn at all. Looks perfect. It's got, just some standard grooving and stuff here on the sides, on the blocks themselves, where obviously there's going to be contact made. So, okay, so yeah, these are the gold springs, so I was right about that. And of course, we're going to put the greens in there. So now all I got to do is put 4 springs in here, sandwich it down, put these back on there, and slide her back in. But now, as a result, that we do have thicker springs in there, this is not going to slide in here like it did before. So I am going to need to shave it down. So there's a pause in the action for a short minute. The belt for that sander up here broke, and man, I haven't used that thing since I bought it, except once to sand down just some edges of a cut piece of wood. I bought it at Ace Hardware because it was on sale. They were going out of business, and they had some stupid prices on a bunch of stuff. I got me a skill saw and all kinds of stuff at a really good price. So, but in the meantime, I was thinking, although I personally have never had this diff pin come out of this differential and damage a case. Matter of fact, if you notice in that prior video segment a moment ago, it just had a hair bit of play back and forth. And when I'm checking the diff pin inside this hole, the roll pin, it sits it does sit pretty loose. I mean, you can sit there and wobble it back and forth. So I've seen some guys, they'll take this roll pin, grind it down, at least if I understood what they were doing in the video, to where they will end up tapping this hole, and then on the opposite side there's another hole like this. Obviously they'll tap that side and put bolts in, maybe stainless steel, I don't know, but they leave, from what I can tell, unless I'm just not looking at it right, they leave that much of this stock roll pin in the differential pin. So I don't understand what that's designed to help keep from happening. I mean, I guess, I don't know. I have no idea. Because what breaks? The roll pin. So what's the point of using that roll pin? It would almost make more sense to tap it all the way through and just run a single stud or single bolt down through it, stainless steel, I don't know. But anyways, it's never happened to me either way in any transmission, in any Saturn I've ever had. And I was at one point in time doing the little peg leg burnouts and stuff like that. And of course at the track, when I had the LSD in here, the Phantom Grip, I was burning out at the track and stuff like that. So I don't know, but Lord knows if it hadn't happened to me yet, if I don't take steps, it probably will, especially if I'm gonna be running a little bit more horsepower, what I'm be doing now. What I thought I would do then, I'm not going to drill and tap anything. I ended up going online. This is like a 40 millimeter by 4 millimeter roll pin. And so I got some coming that are stainless steel. This right here is just regular steel. See, it's magnetized. Stainless steel, you can't do that with. It's got too much chromium in it. But so the 305 stainless steel is much stronger. So
I think this, coupled with a stainless steel roll pin exchanged out for this stock one, I think that ought to keep me safe enough. Like I said, it hadn't happened to me before, you know, and if I take a little extra step now, maybe it won't, even after I do up the horsepower on this thing. So, and I could, apparently there's a limited slip differential for these things, a true LSD. I don't want to spend the money. I mean, it's, you know. So I've talked about the clearances that need to happen here. As you see, as I slide that in there, it starts to bind up. It's not going to go in there like that. I mean, could I hammer it in there? Maybe, sure, you know, whatever. But in the end, what they want you to do is, if and the reason it's not sliding in there now is because I've replaced the was it orange springs with the green springs, and they're thicker and they're stiffer. And matter of fact, they come with their own little set of end caps, because if you try to use the end caps from the orange springs, these pins here are not going to line up. And so now that this thing's thicker, it's not going to slide in here without some help. And so what they want you to do now, keep in mind, when I first put this one in, way back, maybe I was unclear, maybe the directions were unclear, but I machined this. I machined this surface. I didn't machine the gears. But this go around, the directions I have contradict themselves on not only do you shave this or the gears, but how much you shave them. Before, it was supposed to be, I think 22 thousandths, between 15 and 30 thousandths, something like that. And that's kind of like a spark plug gap almost. It's getting up in that area. But now, after just reaching back out to them and clarifying, now they're saying that you want to have a 003 to 005 clearance from here to the gear, and you shave the gear, obviously. I say obviously. Now it's obvious because that's what they're telling me to do. So yeah, that's what you'll need to do. So you'll take these gears out, and as you can see, I have my deal set up over there, my little grinder in the deal. But you'll just take these gears, lay them down, take a little bit off at a time. And yeah, it's going to be kind of tedious because you have to put these gears back in here, test fit that. Okay, I need to come off some more, measure it with the feeler gauge, and just keep going till you can get that right clearance that you need up inside there. So, but anyway, now all you do to get these gears out of here is you just start rotating them, and the small gears are going to fall out, and then you'll be able to get the big gears out. So you can see them sitting right there. And of course, then you got this plastic, it's like a shield kind of deal, and you just line it up with the diff pin hole when you get to that point. But so yeah.
So you can see where I've grounded some of them off. Now again, most of you are aware, you can take off, but you can't put back on, right? So you want to do a little bit at a time. This is the tedious part, unfortunately, but you just got to try this, put them back in there, insert that PG again, and see what you got with your feeler. And then if not, take it back out, sand it down. I'm using some pretty gritty sandpaper up there, so it should be taken off quite a bit. I was going to use these little holes as a guide as I start seeing those disappear, you know, and what kind of cut they're given. It got into it pretty good. You can see the shiny part on there. So it's, but when you're talking about 0.003, 0.005, yeah, you got to take it easy. All right, so I've grounded enough to where I've got my clearance in between here. You can pick it up and move it just a little bit, slides in and out. I settled at, this is hard to read, but 0.004. So that's between 0.003 and 0.005, I think it said in the directions. Yeah, so 0.003 or 0.005, and I have that here. Of course, you can look in there and see it sliding around back and forth inside there. So this is where you want to have it before you take these end clips off, and then of course take these pins out. All right, so it's in here. You see it's got that play. I can move it back and forth, but when I lift up and down, I'm only going to have that 0.05 gap. So it can slide back and forth like that. So once I take these covers off and get these dowels out, it'll spread and tighten up. I got the stainless pin in there for the diff pin. It's all inside there. You can't really see it too good, but it's right there. And release these end caps and we'll start putting this thing back together. Now, as you can see, they're released. There's no movement whatsoever inside there. So the springs are pushing out against the gears for the axle. So now they're like one in one. They're basically joined. It's not like coming in here. Some people will weld plates to these gears. No, it's a bad idea, especially if you have if it's a drag race setup, maybe, yeah, possibly. But a street car, man, you're going to be like turning corners and stuff like that. Screw that. This gives you the ability to still have that type of drivability on the street, but give you that lockup for, you know, basically locking both the axles up when they're turning. Better acceleration, better cornering, things like that. So the diff pin in there, whenever, just to reiterate, when that diff pin goes, it's because through centrifugal force, that little roll pin that keeps it into the brakes, and this isn't in there all the way, so you're hearing some bearing noise, but you see that pin, so whenever that roll pin snaps, that diff pin will come out through centrifugal force, and that's when it grabs and damages the side of the case here. So that's how it breaks. If you have an issue getting this thing back in there after you've lubricated up the other bearing with some transmission fluid, it just doesn't want to seem to go back in, you can take a propane torch and heat up the transmission case itself around. Try to avoid the seal that's there, but heat up around that for just less than a minute, and it flopped right in there. Because, you know, as you probably know, heat expands. So the hole that this is trying to sit into, it'll expand just enough to where it just drops right in there. And that's what it did. So then after you get that done, you're going to take this assembly again, just hold it all together, and you're basically going to just set it all in there at the same time. And as you do that, you're going to be kind of just trying to mesh this gear with the differential gear. So all of this comes up and out like that. Now you just line up this hole here, kind of be watching that other hole, and as you set it all down together, these gears all just mesh up together. So all that's in like that. So after the differential's in, and you have these two main shafts drop down in there. And of course, that's when you're going to mesh your gear. When that all happens, you're meshing that gear with that bottommost gear down here. This one, you basically, the way it comes in is you see that little pin sticking out. You're going to want to put that pin in there and slide this shaft all the way in. And then of course this gear you're going to mesh up with these two here. It pretty much meshes on its own, so you shouldn't have to do much beyond just sliding it in there. And you're just making sure all these are seated down all the way. And then you're going to go over and get the two bolts in that bracket that you put on here, and that's your next step. So the next step would be to put this piece on here with these two bolts. You're going to basically arrange it. Hold on to everything, make sure it's nice and tight. You're basically going to get this thing arranged up to where you can bolt it down at the same time you're fixed on this gear here. So this means this rod will be up in this cleft here. So we're going to move it, play with it, get it up in there. And you see it's on this gear. These gears are engaged and it's up inside this spot right here. So you get your bolts on there. These are 124 inch-pounds is the torque on them. You know, torque and bolts and things like that. I remember laying on the beach in Italy with my girlfriend at the time, a German girl, and trying to stay focused on what I was reading, because at that time I didn't have Christ in my life. And over there at that time especially, it's probably worse now, the way the world's gone. But topless, you could go topless. My German girl was topless. I mean, basking in the sun. And you know the Americans when they're around, because those guys are hound dogging and they're out there with jeans and a t-shirt and getting a farmer's tan. And I'm reading a book about how to rebuild a 350 engine, because at that time I had that Camaro. And everything I could do to focus on that book and stay focused. And but I was reading, and of course torquing, I thought back in those days when I was first getting started that by loosening a bolt, man, you had to, every bolt, not just some, but every, had to have a certain kind of torque put back on it if you messed with it. 124. So again, 124 is the torque. But obviously on things like alternator brackets and things like that, I mean, but especially in times when you're dealing with something like this where it's internal and you don't have an opportunity to get to it easily to retorque it and stuff, now's the time to be a stickler. Go buy yourself a little cheap torque wrench from Harbor Freight, the Icon brand. If you watch a guy named Project Farm on YouTube, he does a lot of comparisons, sometimes ad nauseum. I mean, sometimes I find myself skipping through a bunch of his stuff because it's just, you know, wow, he really goes through and, you know, tests these things. But he did a torque wrench special, and it was putting up against Snap-on, Icon, all these different torque wrenches. Icon, which is Harbor Freight's upstep from, say, like, which one is this one? This is the cheaper one. This is Pittsburgh, I want to say. But it's for simple stuff. So, you know, if this was head gaskets like I did on the Viper, man, I'm borrowing my buddies, my shop's technicians, ones that beep and chime and light up and blink, ones that are quality. But for this type of work, this little simple one is fine. But just make sure you torque it back. You certainly don't have to get back here and start messing with this crap if something ain't right. So moving on. So once you get all this on here, brass tube, this thing, you're going to install it right in there like that. Not a big issue. Make sure you torque it down. Just kidding. Just seat it in there. So next, what we're going to do is we're going to be putting on the housing piece that slides down over all of this. So you're going to want to come through here, and I can see some residue. So we're going to use that anaerobic 515. I've showed y'all this before, just show it again, part number 515. And of course you're going to go around here laying down a bead all the way around wherever this case piece here is going to slide down over. So yeah, just make sure this surface is clean and the surface of the piece that's sliding onto here is clean. So when you're cleaning your surface, of course you can use a scraper, but obviously this is aluminum. And if you get the light just right, you can see that residue. It's almost like a skin, like when it's not real. A lot of times if you put some brake cleaner on it, it'll help kind of illuminate it. Once it dries up off of there, it'll kind of illuminate it up a little bit. And just real carefully use a scraper and scrape that. You see all that stuff coming up? I don't know if you can see that on camera or not. But yeah, you want to make sure this surface is pretty clean. So, and then when you're putting the sealer on here, 1 to 3 millimeter bead, on all the other holes around here, except around this side here, because this is where the clutch slave goes through, it needs to be just on this side. You don't put it around this edge right here, but around the whole perimeter. Inside the bolt holes, you don't have to go around the bolt holes on here. You're basically, the 5 here you do. You want to go around those. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Those you want to go around the bolt hole. You want to encircle that hole. Okay, but just on these 5. The rest of them you go on the inside of the bolt hole all the way around. So what I like to do, I do this when I do valve cover, any other kind of like gasket where I've got a sealer involved. I'll take some just regular like thread studs, like guide studs basically, so as I lay this thing in there, it'll slide over here, and it doesn't have a bolt head on it obviously, so it'll slide right down. It's like a guide pin kind of, and I've got 4 of them here just to help guide it in. So I'm going to lay the sealant now. Alright, so wrapped around 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bolts there at the differential. This thing's pretty cool. It's the tube grip. You know, if you're like me, you sit there and just shake the whole time you're doing this stuff. This one here, it's like a gun. You slip the end of it in there like that, and you just barely apply, and it squeezes it out pretty well. So if you have something, you want to do something, you just take it easier, the tube grip. They have like several different ones. You know, I'm sure that's been knocked off already. It wasn't expensive at all, and it's first time to use, and it's great. So as you're doing this, you got to work it. Okay, there's a groove on each one of these bearings. This one here is further down than this one, and what you can do is you're going to have to take like this mallet, pound, pound, pound. I ended up having to use a screwdriver, a flat tip, to kind of hold it back over here while I was using my snap ring pliers to open it up and get it to go down. Once you kind of get it down through there, just keep a little tapping kind of hard, and it'll get down onto the face of the bearing. And then once it does that, once it clears the face of this bearing and it's just on the bearing itself, then you can put this nut on here, and on this shaft use that as a fulcrum point to kind of pull up on this thing. Okay, not too hard, but just enough, and once it does that, it's going to snap down in that groove, and then that puts enough pressure on this ring right here to then also be, to where you can start trying to work with that one. They're not fun. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and say it's easy, but it is what it is. See, now you can see that snap ring is in that top groove. That's on the smaller, or the smaller protruding shaft. Basically, I was able to get the snap ring started on the face of that. On the face of the bearing, just get it started. Just get it started below, and then take this nut, put it on here, and use your pry bar like that, and just kind of pull up on it. Just kind of lift up on it, and it snapped into that face. Now the question is this one over here fully seated? I think it is. I think it's in that groove. It's hard to see on this one. So yeah, what I did is I just did this again on this side and used this post as the fulcrum and pulled up on it, and it is in that groove in there. All right. So now we'll go around getting all these bolts started in here. They're 21 foot-pounds, and there is a pattern that they want you to do, but common sense says to do 1 1 1 1 side, one side to the other. I'm going to run them down so I can save some time. I did clean the threads. I like to do that now. I bought me one of those kits to like bolt hole rethreader. I got that and the nuts for them. Like on this one here, especially on that end there, they had some of that sealant that was in the threads, and that's going to mess up your torque when you go to torque the thing down. Okay, so all bolts are in. We're just going to run them down. Some of that juice got inside there, kind of sticking it up. 4, 5. I like going in the sequence. That's just the way I am. Maybe stupid, but what I'm going to do is I'll take a picture of that torque sequence and put it in the screen here. Like I said, I'm just running them down right now. Because look, the thing is, if I didn't, then in my mind, if it leaks for some reason, well, I did something wrong, All right, let's talk it. Number 1. That's 1. 4.
7 is over here. And 12 top over here. Okay, me likey. And finally, never leave your torque wrenches with torque on them. Wears them out, or makes them less accurate. Alright, so these nuts, I think I said we're not supposed to be reusing them, but I have to because good luck finding these. May be able to, but I don't think so. But, so, I am going to use a little Loctite when I put them on. I encourage you to also. Alright, so we're going to finish this thing out. So this smaller gear, this is the smaller the smaller shaft that's sticking up. This is that gear that goes on there. We're going to just install it on there like that. Alright, we're going to get this set on here. For whatever reason, these scare me, these little needle bearings. I mean, be very careful with those. But anyway, that slides down on there, and then this sucker here should slide down on here as well. There's a little relief here for this tube. And of course this piece is going to fall down into here. This gear is going to mesh with this gear. So yeah, all that's going to be going on. So hopefully. Did I tell you how much I despise transmissions? And how I've never really cared to know how they work, to work on them. I think I'm going to do this a little differently. I'll put that in here already. And this as well. Yeah. Let's try this. Alright, everything's nice and seated, everything's meshed, and next we're going to put that little clip on that we took off. Alright, so our little trusty Loctite. This is blue, it's not red, but I cleaned the threads up good. And on Loctite, you don't just want to put a drop inside there. You want to go around the whole perimeter of it. I say I'm going to put some Loctite in here. I don't know if there's even any left in here. I might have to get that other two. There we go. It puked out. There we go. Next. Tube. All right. And this is a 29 millimeter. If you took them off, you should have it. think I was going to run them down with the impact, but I think I'm going to. Alright, well, my son came out and held it with me. We torqued it down. It's all good. Alright, so next up we got to put this cover top on, and then the shift tower, and that should be about it. Go ahead and clean this up a little bit again. Ooh, it was a doozy. Now 110 foot-pounds torque ain't that hard to put on. It was holding this. I got this thing on this flimsy old table, and with him holding it and me holding it and torquing at the same time, I looked at these legs on this table, and man, it looked like they were bent over like almost 45 degrees. So we get this clean. This cleaned. The bolts. There's a little scraper. Today's a good day. At church today, the pastor has gotten through, he had blood cancer. And of course, this has been going on for some time. His first wife died of cancer. Kim. And it was years long. They'd have victory, and then of course it would return and stuff like that. And now he is suffering from it. However, everything's looking good. Today was his first day back. He had a, man, I want to say it was a bone marrow transplant, some kind of, he had to be out for like a couple weeks because of infection possibilities and stuff like that. So he's back today. We're all glad. That's good. The beautiful thing, and that's why I brought it up on just doing this real quick, is when you have Christ, the Bible didn't say you're spared any sorrows, any challenges in life. Matter of fact, when you become a Christian, they're going to amplify, because your eyes are going to be opened to things that you have done in the past and became accepting of them, and now you're not doing them, so you're going to lose. You may lose friends, you may even lose family. My dad is a good example. He raised us up in the Lutheran church, and the only thing he ever told us to do is do good and graduate high school. And let me tell you what, he was a sailor in the Navy, and I think he might be the one who they came up with the saying, "Cuss like a sailor." The Lutheran Church is kind of an offshoot of Catholicism without a lot of the unnecessary stuff in it, right? And they believe you're saved by faith, by grace, not by works. And the Catholic Church pretty much teaches works-based salvation. And so that was a right step, but I, looking back now, where I'm at, where he was at, where we were at as a family, he didn't have Christ in his heart. And I tried talking to him about that one time, and like most people were, we were baptized as babies and stuff like that, and that's pointless. But he didn't become upset. He looked bewildered, like first time he was hearing that. But anyway, when you have Christ in your life and he's leading your life, yes, you're going to have challenges. You may even get sick. You may die from that sickness. But you know where you're going, and that's the trick. No one really ever dies, so you live forever. It just depends where you live forever. And so you want to have that assuredness that you're going to go to heaven, and And I have it. It's something that's very comforting to know that if something were to happen to my son, my daughter, my wife, myself, God will take care of everything, and I'm at peace with that. And it hurts to know that there's a lot of people out there that don't have peace in their lives, and that they're hurting. They're hurting, sometimes silently. And it's sad. It makes me sad to know that. Okay, so I'm suspecting that these reliefs here engage this post here. I'm thinking, let me get my bearings straight. I could be telling you wrong. So it's going to go on like this. So if we flip it, like this, it looks like this tube is meant to kind of get up inside of here somewhere, inside this cavity. And so that means this thing, let's just kind of see if we can't stab it right. This is just a test fit. I haven't put the sealant on it because I don't want to put the sealant on it and be struggling with this. So it looks like to me, if I line myself up with this, you know, and forgive my stumbling through this, man. I've done this twice, but it's been so long. I don't remember when I did it last, and that's sad. But it just goes to show you, I did it almost 23 years ago. That's weird. Oh my goodness. All right, so yeah, it looks like it would line up right about there. Yeah. Okay, so yeah. So you're just going to have to try to eye it. There's that relief right there. It's going to be engaged by this little block that's sticking up inside of there. So this little relief here is going to go in that block. So once you get this thing positioned, and you know you're going to be able to stab it, this might be a good time to use my patented guide pins. Again, these are just some studs with the heads cut off of them. And I can use this once I get my bead ran, so that I can set this down nice and smooth. I'll try it a couple times. There's that one. There's that one. Right down on top. Perfectimo. That's strange. I guess the fluid. Oh, okay. I think I see. So fluid jets up out of here, goes into this little cavity here, and there's like a lip. It catches it and then feeds it through here, which drips right down onto this gear set, it looks like. That's the best I can determine was what happens. Alright, so let's clean this one more time, and then we're going to start putting some goo on it. I sure wished I had those gaskets. But that was the most disappointing thing, you know. I mean, Saturn did so well for a decade, and they kind of sat on their butts, and I guess never believed that people would ultimately get a family, have some kids, need a bigger vehicle. And so when they finally tried to catch up, they puked out the L series, the Astra van. No, it wasn't the Chevy Astra. Was it the Astra? Saturn Astra? It was junk. I remember I was working there when they came out, and I went out and sat in, and I was like, man, nobody's gonna buy this junk. So, and right when they start kind of coming out with something halfway decent, with the Saturn Sky, the Saturn View that had the 3.5 Honda engine in it, which is the only reason I ended up buying one for my wife, because those Opel engines they had in there, the V6s, junkety junk. But they were desperate. They didn't have an engine program good enough to totally devise a V6, and so they begged and borrowed, and that's what they got. Alright. I think I have enough of this stuff left. I sure hope I do. It's a small tube. Alright. So on the cover gasket here, you're going to do, yeah. So on the cover gasket, if you had the regular gasket, you would just set it on here, and it's 106 inch-pounds is what they're torqued to. But we don't have that gasket, so we're going to use this stuff again. And just like down here, there was only a couple places where they wanted you to go around the bolt holes, but it can't hurt to go around them. With this thing being up and on its side with like a concentration of fluid down here on this end, I'm going to go around them. You know, it's just, it doesn't hurt anything. Let's see here. There we go. I'm going to lay down a thin bead. Boy, this gun is something else. I love it. I'd be sitting here shaking. First I'll make my bead in front of the holes. Then I'll come back around and do the back side of the holes. Alright, stop there. Put this little thing back in here. But man, it's so sad that Saturn, you know, I mean, there was millions of those cars made. And I get it when a company shuts down, but you could still get parts through GM for Saturn. But the older the car gets, obviously the worse it gets. But still, man, there used to be that M&S Recycling. Odd pick of cars, but they had a mighty selection of Mitsubishi and Saturn vehicles. And I was looking for some taillights for that 95. I'm sorry, headlight motors for the 95 before I got rid of it, because I was going to return it to, you know, just do a sparse interior. I even actually thought that if I could fit the interior of this 97 into there, which I'm pretty sure I could have, then I was going to just move all the interior from that car into the 95. Air conditioning, the whole dash, everything. But I wasn't sure, so I wasn't willing to try. And so I got rid of it. But man, I could find no wiper motor. I know you could probably send it to a company and have them built, or rebuilt rather, like A1 car done. But that thing, even when you get parts for regular cars from A1, those things are junk. It's not a good company. They used to be a long time ago. Alright, close. I may have enough. Alright, cover on. Alright, we'll say goodbye for now. Alright. 6 inch-pounds. We use our inch-pound one here in a crisscross fashion. So there is no torque sequence. They just say go back and forth, you know, across, like you're tightening up a lugs on a car's tires. There's that. Now, this stuff doesn't really dry per se, so I'm going to let it sit for a little while, and then I'm going to go over and just wipe it all down, get all this excess off. Because when I go to put this sucker in there, I can sure bet you it's going to go all over me. Alright, so now we need to do the cover, the top cover here. But before we do that, I'm going to do something I rarely do. I'm going to take the internet's recommendations. I'm told that if you cut this right here and you flip it up to where it's up here with the post sticking out that way, it creates a short throw effect. Now I've already got a short shifter. I basically cut the stalk of the shifter down, so I've already got it short. So hopefully it'll be really, really short now. If it doesn't, and I screw myself and destroy a perfectly good shift tower, I do have that other one on the other SC2, and I think I have one more trans upstairs. So hopefully this will work. The only reason I'm actually doing it against my better judgment is because it's on the very top of the transmission, very easy to get to and swap out if it doesn't work. So there you go. So the way it works is, this is how it sits on top of the transmission, obviously. This one, you're going to cut it here, right there on that little offshoot where it goes from 45 to 90. Then you're just going to take this and you're just going to raise it up to here. So now it's going to be, this portion here is going to be up here. You're still going to have your post sticking out on this side, but so really all you're going to do is cut it, flip it, and this post is still sticking out here. It's just going to be sticking out way up here rather than down here. Were you guys as scared for my fingers as I was just now? I couldn't keep this shaft from moving, or this lever from moving. So there it is. You take it off. We're going to handle this appropriately. So it's going to be like that now. All right. So I'm going to go a little flatter here on this one. And so I can have a better vantage to, and I'm gonna try to mount it, I'm gonna try to weld it as horizontally as possible. Yeah, we'll see. All right, so hopefully this is gonna be a good thing. I don't know, let me paint it. Looks like crap, obviously, but it is what it is. It should hold. All right, so here this is. Oh, Lord, help me if this ain't right. If it doesn't work. Oh, my gosh. But nothing ventured, nothing gained, as they say. So, we'll see. I'll make certain to report to you and let you know. Now, I will say on this here, I am going to go around the bolt holes on this one, because the gasket itself would be encircling the bolt holes, and so it makes sense that if I'm going to redo the gasket on here with some kind of liquid agent, then I need to kind of do what the original gasket was doing. All right, so it's back together. So basically, there's some things you can do that they say you should do. I don't know, man. These bolts, they want you to dip them in trans fluid and then dry off the excess, you know, kind of like a lubricant before you put them in and torque them down. We talked about the torque specs. These are 21 foot-pounds. These are 106 inch pounds. Those axles, the axle nuts, I put Loctite on them in there, and those were 111 foot-pounds. And I think these were 21 as well. When you're doing the gasket around here, when you're doing this anaerobic thing, and again, I strongly encourage you to get one of these little things. They're so cool, worked so good. On some of it, it shows you to go around the bolt holes. So where the differential's at, you can see here, it goes on the inside of the bolt hole. Get this thing to focus. And then it wants you to go around the bolt holes on these locations right here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the 5 perimeter bolts where the differential's at on the case, they want you to put that seal around the bolt holes, whereas on the other ones you don't have to. You can just go on the inside of the bolt hole. Okay, and of course right here is where your shift slave cylinder goes through, so this doesn't have any fluid in it, so you're not going to worry about this section right here. And that's pretty much it. Here's a little bit darker picture of it so you can see what they're talking about. All right. Now for kicks, I did get online and look for some of these gaskets. I'd rather have used those. Here you're going to use the anaerobic sealer, but since I didn't have it, these are all pretty much the same kind of situations. I ended up using the anaerobic sealer all the way around. One tube got me through all of those seals. Plus, I had to take this back off to look for that issue, which obviously we got that handled. So anyway, yeah. Again, not the funnest thing for me to do. I hate transmissions. I'd never own an. I would never try to break down an automatic transmission. Could I get my head around it? Could I do it? Yes. Do I want to? Absolutely not. So now that we're done with this, I'm going to get, the next step would be to put the transmission on the engine. We're going to put the engine and trans back in the car. I'm going to test fit to see if that intake manifold is going to hit or not. If it doesn't, I haven't done the gasket surface or anything like that. I'm not wasting my time until I do find out I'm not going to crush a good gasket when I don't know if it's going to work or not. So once I get that figured out, I'll probably end up taking the manifold off while it's in the car, taking that over to R&J and letting them put those nipples on for the PCV valve and the brake booster. And after that, I've got to do a little bit of welding on the exhaust on that repair I did several videos ago, that flex tube. I've got to take that, get that finished to be welded, and then tack it on to what's there already, and then take that pipe off and take it in and get it welded. So
Once I get done with that, that should be it. We should be able to, boom, fire it up, go blow it up somewhere. All right. Thanks for watching, guys.